Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to this RPG with DBJ channel, TriCast over on Twitch, YouTube, and our own Discord server. Yeah, welcome to the only unscripted, live, long form show on the internet with me as your host. And this time, for the next large number of weeks, we're going to start cutting class. Yeah, we are going to dive deep into the classic Dungeons and Dragons class types, but not in the manner in which you are thinking. We are going to take them apart during the week, make fun of them, dribble them, make a shot, stick them down in our pants. We'll do the whole thing. Dirty and comedically and intellectually. This week we're starting with the Bard, and today on this hump day, on this world building Wednesday, we're going to use the Bard. And normally on World Building Wednesday, for the rules, as it were, we take our concept and we build a world using that concept as the main energy. It's the fuel, it's the engine that starts to create our setting. Morning all. Morning guys. Red Dice Diaries is here. Jarl DM guys. By the way, check them out on YouTube and other platforms. You won't be disappointed. Anyway, Jarl DM says, I'm starting to play in a new campaign tonight, and I get to play an elf, a magical elf. Wow, that's different for you. Good for you. A rarity for me. I think Bard is going to be my choice. Be nice to the DM. Lloyd. You could be pretty brutal to DMs, man. Be nice. Anyway, a setting where bards have dominated the landscape. Where they have dominated the landscape. I'm thinking out of many of the settings, if you were to take all the character classes, I think bards, more than even like the other character classes like clerics or wizards, I think in a land ruled by bards, not only would I think industry be at its peak, I think it would be at its peak verisimilitude in terms of like bumping up against a Renaissance period. But I think monuments to culture and history and even ego would abound. I'm talking like, yeah, like Jarl DM says, like if we think of The Witcher, mages sort of dominate by being advisors to kings, yep, and queens. I think that bards would easily surpass them in this role. Oh hell yes. If you think of three, I'm thinking of three, maybe four societal roles bards would play. One would be at the very pinnacle, the very top. They are the movers, shakers. They are the kings, the queens, they are the ones drawing all the attention, garnering all the attention, and deciding when and where things should be, how society should move. And I can imagine a bard demanding something being done, people telling them they can't do it, and then the bard going back and going, well, if you can't do it, I'll find somebody who will. And either they do find somebody who does, some kind of sycophant or whatever, or kiss ass, or heck, just somebody who wants to be attached to the person who has all of the influence, or the public itself looks down upon the person that won't do it. They find someone. I am not saying this person is a bard, but I'm thinking of Dubai and the Arab Emirates, where the ruling prince or something there. I don't know the ins and outs of the cultural system, but I know that they've built these Palm Islands and the World Islands, and it's like, you can't do that. He's like, I've got like trillions of dollars. Yes, I can. There's literally money coming out of the ground, so I'm going to do it, right? So yeah. Um, uh, ooh, ooh. Hey, Andres. Martin says, excuse me, wow. Jarl DM says in Irish mythology, bards were treated with the greatest kindness and respect because one song could ruin your reputation forever. Yes, let me read. Tesla Ranger put in a quote, and I saw this the other day, and I was like, hell yeah, this is more. This is not just more relevant today. I think, period, it's relevant and end of story. All right, so the quote is: the bards were feared. They were respected, but more than that, they were feared. If you pissed off some witch, then what's she gonna do? She's gonna put a curse on you. No big deal. You piss off a bard and forget about putting a curse on you, he might put a satire on you. And if he was a skillful bard, he puts a satire on you and it destroys you in the eyes of your community. And if it's a particularly good bard and he's written a particularly good satire, then 300 years after you're dead, people are still going to be laughing at what a twat you were. Quote from Alan Moore. Yeah, that's pretty reasonable, right? And I understand in role playing games, like uh, sticks and stones, right? But in reality, when you're ruined in the community, it's that's your livelihood. If someone can't trust you, they don't like you. If someone understands that their status reduces by even associating with you, Bard has a lot of power. And so I'm thinking there would be a one generation of bards or part of bards that would just be right at the top, the pinnacle. They're sitting on the thrones, and then yeah, like Jarl DM says, reputation is one of the most important aspects of a ruler. Yep, and absolutely. As a matter of fact, you for most of history, your reputation is what gave you your power, not anything else. Meaning, like a lot of nobles need to be recognized by the church. If you were not recognized by the faith, you didn't have power. If you weren't recognized by the master of coins, the people who brought in the merchants and the farmers and the guild members, if you weren't recognized by them, forget it. If the people just honestly didn't like you, there were more commoners than anything. If people just all of a sudden looked around and was like, they're not leading us, and just turned their backs, you have no power. um, it is a collective, you know government and other forms of society operate on our collective. I don't want to. I guess fantasy is the wrong way. Our collective imaginations that we all believe in a system that does not exist in physicality. If the head of the military, especially if the head of the military, doesn't recognize you, forget it. Now, Red Dice Dynasty says, well, the phrase "history is written by the victors" should be "history is written by the people who tell the story." Yeah, yeah. Every country rewrites their own history to make themselves the hero, and try their best to stick as many dust bunnies and toys under the carpet so no one sees it. Right? Stick it in the closet. Yeah, don't look over here. So my second, I think bards on the ones at the very top, the ones who are bold. They dress in finery. They have monuments built to their own excellence. I think they are like burning stars, right? Where much like our social media is today, some famous people, they're either loved or hated. There's very few neutral individuals out there. And when you're loved, people will pass out in the streets just to be within your presence. And when they hate you, woo, they will rip you a new one and force you to go and find a cave and stick your head into it. The second role, I think, is the longer one. Takes a lot of ingenuity and takes a very strong ego, and those are the king and queen makers. Um, Andres says, sorry, very random idea. Okay, I hear you getting a little squirrely. What about a world where the gods made the world by singing, and the bards can tap into the residual power of those songs and the knowledge of those gods. You know, explaining why bards have magic in the first place can often be, I think, on the surface, can be a little problematic. And I like the idea of a divine song and the bards are only singing like certain chords of it, or they're trying to, you know, your lord bards are trying to amass the song that can literally make or unmake the world. They can bring back someone from the dead. They can, you know, build castles with the very songs but by singing it. So yeah, oh hell yeah, I love that. Yeah, your ideas is in Middle Earth. There's stuff about the gods singing the world into being. That's about as far as the Cimmerillion I can get before I tap out. Yeah, I as uh, I'll admit that while I have read the, you know, the Lord of the Rings books and Hobbit and stuff, it was a little, it was a little dense. It was a little thick. It was like a peanut butter. It was a choke sandwich. It was kind of peanut butter and rye bread to me. It was. I got through it. I pushed. I don't think I could do it today. I'd have to listen to it. I have to audiobook it for, honestly. But that's a side squirrel. Now the, yep, yeah. Cameron says that makes me think of bard priests that raise armies of stone warriors from the walls of a citadel, singing and chanting and such. Unfortunately, I think bards are kind of, the word bard kind of like pigeonholes them into a Eurocentric ideal, because I believe there are, while they may not be called bards, I like the idea of, and in many cultures the bard is the center of culture for various, whether it's tribes or organizations or groups or whatnot. And heck, every country has a has their own anthem, their own theme songs. Let's not forget that. Now, the second part of bards, I think, are the king and queen makers, the ones who whisper in ears. And if your ego is good, is is strong enough, that's where I think bards will have the longest life. The ones who find others, who are willing to groom others to be in the public eye, and they sit in the back. And that's a subtle game, and it's also one, it's the difference between, do you want to be rich or do you want to be powerful, right? Do you want to be rich or do you want to be famous? And lots of people say, well, if I'm famous I can become rich, but if I'm rich it might be a little bit more difficult. And there are lots of very hideously rich people in the world who don't want attention, and their lives are long and luxurious, whereas some people like to be the burning star, and the money and influence and power is only there to stroke their own ego in the dirtiest of ways, you know. And so, yeah, like Jarl DM says, clever rulers will use bards to their advantage to manipulate crowds, to garner support from disparate entities, to make a diplomatic, to be a diplomat for a group, or faction or organization or a nation, you know. Yeah. Yep, the manager bard. Yeah, the mana bard. Hey, that goes back to Entourage, right? Um, Jarl DM says in Game of Thrones, the song "The Reigns of Castamere" is used by Tywin Lannister to project power and tell the story that basically says, "Don't dare mess with me." Yep, it's a reminder. Oh, by the way, if you don't remember this history, here's a song that tells you that if you put your nail shaped head up, you're gonna get hit on right on the top of your forehead with a hammer. Just to remind you about that. Cameron says, have y'all heard the story? Excuse me. Have y'all heard the theory that Shakespeare was a group of writers rather than one person? I I've heard about that. That Shakespeare wasn't a person. I've heard that rumor before. Yep, and what's the other gentleman? Sun Tzu and the Art of War. That the Art of War was not written by one person, but that it was gathered together. It was basically a treatise written down by things said by a number of other past, military commanders. It just so happened that Sun Tzu was the one to to cultivate the language and put it together into one treatise that could be read by everyone. So yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Now the second the I'm sorry, the third place that I think that bards would, I think you'll find a larger number of them, is all the bards that are part of organizations, factions, small communities that are all vying for a spot at the top. And for me, I think that's where the fun would come in, because especially with when you're dealing with bards, it's going to be like it's the, if you're not my friend, you're my enemy, because so many will want to get as many allies to their side. And even if the bards don't think this, once they start gathering a group, and we all know for every group that gets together, the more extreme they are, the more they start to eat themselves from the inside. Our RPG community or geekosphere, we've got so many niche groups that are like competing against each other. How we love to Groups will start to measure their loves by their hates, by the things that they hate. It's like, oh, I read Marvel comics. That means I have to hate on DC. I love Star Trek, so I've got to hate Star Wars. And then if you're in Star Wars, it's like you're not a real fan because you don't know all the ins and outs of Star Wars, and you got to hate on everybody that doesn't know as much and whatnot. And I think a bard, while they're probably the easiest individuals to get people motivated to do something, to get together to do a thing, no matter how unlikely. I think also they're the easiest ones to have that tatter and fall apart without their without expending a lot of energy to keep that group together. Hey, want to build an aqueduct? The best way, I don't care all your strong barbarians and fighters out there. I don't care about all your brilliant, sorcerers and uh, or so your wizards out there that are like that come up with the great ideas. I don't care about your sorcerers that have natural power to get this built together, or clerics that have the faith and touched by the gods. It takes a bard to be like, all right, guys, we're going to do this. Everybody get together because this is the best idea ever. It's the political speeches that are there's nothing to fear but fear itself, or you know what is it like, um, we're going to get to the moon and do that and the other thing. It's the 7 years ago, and then everyone's like, yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to build an aqueduct, right? And then the bard starts going, all right, you're the strong one, you go ahead and lift that, and you're the intelligent one, let's make a plan. The bard doesn't need to be the most intelligent. I think that they are the motivators to build cities on the backs of giants, carved from mountains, and massive monuments to greatness, and having these long legacies and whatnot. Yep, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I mean, these things have lasted for ages. Military schools teach these things to their students, and this is, in war. So a lot of times, I think bards, would have the longest, whether they desire to or not. I feel like a bardic society would be the most. I think it would become the closest to a Renaissance period. I believe like it would be the closest to firearms and gunpowder, to nobility and stability. Not stability in the sense of who leads, but I mean having enough food and water and security, because while one little old person in the background might say, "Hey, I got a great idea to feed the population a much easier way by not having to haul water from a far distance or worry about crops. We can make greenhouses." I think the bard would be the person to go like, "Listen, we need to stop starving. Somebody out somewhere out there, come give me a great idea." And mechanically speaking, in the game, you are better for listening to a bard, right? So that's what makes me think that these places would be, fashion would be a big deal. Um, um, Going into the arts itself would be a viable and even robust economy. As a matter of fact, that the arts itself, much like in our society, we've got here in the States, we've got Hollywood, which is literally a um, what would you call a county? Um, it's not the whole state, but it's really Bollywood is another thing where the arts itself is a viable career. You can live a fruitful life being in a career based in entertainment, and you can only do that when survival is put to the back burners, and you can only do that with growing technology, education, and that kind of thing. Uh, Red Dice Diary says, quote, "And thus it was in the year of our Lord 220 that the great bardic defamation wars began." Yeah, yeah. Now inside of from the outside, I think the monuments of greatness and whatnot, I think people would flock to places that are like, what? I don't have to scrounge for food and everything. Yeah, let's go there. I think once you're in it, ugh, assassinations, defamation, lies, theft, bribery. I think that kind of of danger would just replace disease, starvation, finding shelter. I think that would be the replacement for it. Uh, Cameron says, "I prefer to think of Shakespeare as one person with a grandiose mind who could have had some D&D like urban adventures during his day." Yeah, yeah. I mean, and listen, there's a lot of like really dark twists in in Shakespeare. The idea of um, of removing the expected result and having a twist on the end where it like turns really dark. I have a feeling like in this bardic society, that's exactly how it would be. Jarl DM says the most fantastical thing about this setting is that being an artist is a well-paid, viable career. Hashtag theater director sadness. Yeah, yeah. I agree with you. I think um, it would it would almost behoove any person in leadership to have a part of their leadership within the arts to represent themselves in doing other things. So what I mean is, sure, you might be a master carpenter, but no one may go to your carpenters guild unless you can show like one of like this massive, very intricately designed, architecturally fantastical home or building or something to someone in leadership, and everyone's like, "Ooh, look how beautiful that is!" It's um, how many times Elvish impersonator Magic the Gathering card. When you let's see, it's it's a green and 3 mana. When you play Elvish Impersonators, roll 2 6-sided dice, one after the other. Elvish Impersonator comes into play with power equal to the first die roll and toughness equal to the second. Uh-huh. Yeah, he's got a Postman song. Damn it. Elvish has left the building. Oh no! Oh, Jarl, you're gonna have a lot of fodder with that one. Red Dice Diary says if they want it to make it more realistic, the replacement class for Bard would be office worker. with the background wanted to be a bard, but there was no money in it. Hells yes. Hells yes. You got that right. Um, so okay, so for me, I'm thinking in this bardic world, not only would there be constant like building up and tearing down of anything. When I say monuments, I don't mean just physical like monuments chiseled out of stone, but I'm talking about tapestries, um, uh, physical displays of fashion and honor, like purple being royal, or wearing black skin tight leathers, or certain types of hairstyles, or like for example, wearing powdered wigs and knickers or something like that. I think a lot of that would be there, and of course there would be tons of darkness in the corners, where the red light district would be at its worst, because any bard that's a criminal is going to be surrounded by people who are willing to do what it takes to be in the good graces of that person who has the control, like I said, bribery, assassinations, um, hell, lots of child endangerment by being human trafficking and slavery. I'm thinking a lot of that because if you are someone who garners a lot of respect just by your words, you're not going to care about, or a lot of them are not going to care about the end result. Sure, you will have your bards who are going to speak up against the people in power who are putting down the downtrodden and whatnot. And yes, their rebellions will start over and over again because those in leadership are going to rape the coffers of money and power and influence and push things a little bit too far. And there's always going to be some youngins coming up, and there are going to be rebellions, and going into these temples of arrogance and slay the people in there and take over, and people in the streets are going to cheer, and the whole process will start all over again. Yep. Red Dice is or like the mad hair crests the Centauri have in Babylon 5. What if you're a smooth criminal? Uh-oh. Camera's like, oh my God, girl, you just opened up a box of hip movement. I'm putting an Elvis Presley and Elvis impersonators in all my games. Elvis impersonators. Oh my goodness. I guess they'll be doing their best drits with the hip movement. A couple of scimitars. Mm-hmm. Mm-mm. Uh, Elfish parsley. All right, um, so what would the PCs be doing? I think in a bardic controlled society setting, I think the player characters, it behooves them to be, no matter what other character classes they play, they have to have some social skills and embrace. This is a session zero thing. They'd have to really embrace the idea of knowing that all of their actions, physical actions, exploration, who they talk to, who they befriend, who they make enemies with, are going to have long-term effects. It's going to have a ripple effect because much like playing in, say, um, Legend of the Five Rings, which absolutely positively embraces the idea of a fictional world of Japanese honor and face and ancestry, and embracing that. Or hell, Jarl DM's Isklof. By the way, go look it up on Drive Through RPG and other places. Just like Isklof, a lot of that has to do with the balance between practicality and survival, and holding to your word and honor, and how the two can very easily conflict with each other, even though the rest of society is telling you that they don't conflict, that they actually work together quite well. It's those kind of things. Dead Man puts in Beowulf was originally a bardic epic told or sung by Dutch scald. I'm going to butcher those pronunciations, Nordic pronunciations, but sorry. Oh, I loved Beowulf. Directed by Robert Zemeckis, with Ray Winstone, Crispin Glover, Angelina Jolie, and Robin Wright. The warrior Beowulf must fight and defeat the monster Grendel, who is terrorizing Denmark, and later Grendel's mother, who begins killing out of revenge. Yep. I love that movie. The and it's all CGI too. Kind of cool. The idea that we are in this world and understand that the wrong thing said, the wrong broken promise, the an ally to one makes you an enemy of so many others. I think would be very important. As a matter of fact, I'm going to bring it up again because I bring it up a lot. Blades in the Dark is a perfect example of this, where you may be running the street trying to rise above yourselves, and there are so many other factors in the background who are whether there are other factors, the factions in the background who are trying to bring you down or looking at you as you start to move up, and then others start to get the jealousy and they see how popular you are. Influencers today run that gamut, right? I mean, there are people who are Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, YouTube, you know, Reddit Discordians who have garnered a huge following. And what happens? There's people who flock around them who love to hate on them. They love them and they love to hate on them. Yeah. Dead Man says the movie's only about half the story. Although I think the movie did a good job in trying to visually portray the stories, but yeah, it's only half the story, and it's pretty epic. I think also because of bards and their ability to gather lots of information, I could see player characters adventuring outside of these bardic controlled city states to reenact the stories of old, to find out how true they were, or finding out that those old stories were actually very true, and then coming back with a story of your own, sung to the masses and whatnot, almost as if half of it would be adventuring, the other half is making sure the stories get out of your adventures, right? And then that becomes its own thing where you could people who sing your praises literally or figuratively, the ones who make tapestries or paint the sides of buildings with your image, who put your crests into the armor worn in armies, or your symbol of your adventures or your faith is used as an additional tattoo on the backs and arms and legs of the people who, because this is the way they show their honor to the people who are their greatest hunters, warriors, doctors, educators, et cetera, et cetera. I think that would be pretty amazing. Pretty darn amazing. So anyway, guys, for enemies, I think stacked enemies would be a great thing. Adversaries, meaning like you could getting an ally makes you an enemy of someone else. So their agents come after you, but you may not know who's behind those agents. And then when you find who's behind those agents, that agent, very charismatic, who's gathered together somebody, might then be manipulated, um, whether it's manipulation through influencing, whether it's manipulation through bribery or satire, just manipulation due to threat of having your reputation ruined. Maybe there's somebody behind that. So I could see you could play around with a pyramid of or web a lattice of interconnections where you defeat one person, but then you have to go up the ladder to defeat somebody else, and someone sees you going up the ladder and defeating them. Heck, even the old R.A. Salvatore stories about the war between the Drow elves, the Dark elves, where everyone knows that two houses going at war is going to happen, but it was about how the population understands it. If you go to war and you fail, your house is ruined and you have no power. If you go to war and you succeed, the house that gets destroyed, they are wiped out of history and existence. And some of them run for it, others get killed, and yet more even get absorbed into these other houses, maybe even one day to enact revenge and such. So, yep. Oh yeah, Deadman says Grendel was set off by the noisy singing, reveling in the longhouse. I forgot about that. Yeah, that was a. If you look behind the scenes, that was a well acted and crazy over the top Crispin Glover who did the mocap for the original Grendel troll, whose ears were so sensitive that they were being affected by the singing and stuff. Yep. Yeah, Red Dice Diary says the true tragic price of barding. Yeah. Oh yeah. So, guys, thank you very much for just being here. Unfortunately, we cannot do our hour-long shows any longer, but that's okay. Most of the time, I just go off on tangents and we get a little bit squirrely. So now we're just gonna have to pack in our amazing creativity in a smaller package. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for being here in this station dedicated to the imagination. I appreciate you guys being here. Thank you so much. Tomorrow is Third Pillar Thursday. That's where we get to talk about the third pillar of exploration, with the other two pillars being combat and social interaction. So what will we talk about then? You'll see later. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for being here. I will see you later. Bye. Thanks for watching.